Hi, I'm Rick Crow, and this is Short Track Stories.
All right, Bill, thank you so much for joining us here on Short Track Stories. A formal introduction. So my name's Brandon, and I am the nephew of Rick Crow. And from what I gathered, you haven't really quite met, or
Never really met, but I've heard his name a lot around Saga Speedway from racing, so I know his name.
Yeah, never met. Of course, we met Kay every Saturday because Bill's wife Kay worked the pit gate in the office of Saga Speedway. So when we didn't get paid, or we had an issue, or we needed to get in, or what, we always got a hold of Kay, and she was always a pleasant person to deal with, and actually helped me set this up.
Is that right? She worked for Ray Wilkins full time in the administrative offices.
Correct. So Bill, we did kind of a little fan vote on Facebook and some other platforms, and you were highly rated to come and chat with. As a matter of fact, I've been getting some texts today from some people telling me, ask them about this, ask them about this, ask them about this. And so I was wondering why we never really crossed paths. And it seems that when, my years at Saugus, you had already kind of jumped ship and were doing West Cars, and the whole Spears thing had already come to fruition. But take us back to what got you hooked on racing. It looks like you're just like True Cheek. You went to visit the track with a friend, and that was like, I guess, around 1978. Tell us about that.
I was always into cars growing up and mechanical things and stuff like that. And I actually had a drag racing car that I used to mess around with. It was you'd make 4 passes in a day because there was so many cars there, and so a buddy of mine brought me out to Saga Speedway in '78, and it looked like a lot of fun. I got a set of rules the first time I went there and started figuring out what I could do to participate in that street stock class. So it was.
What you really mean is you got a set of rules and figured out how you could I always say there's 3 sets of rules, right? The written rules. If you follow those, you'll never win.
Well, I mean, I was new, so you follow by the rules when you're new. And I found a 64 GTO that a friend had sitting in his backyard in a field. It was beat up. It was pretty much wiped out, but it cost me $50 and it had an engine in it. I had to put a transmission in it, and I took it over to PFC Welding, had them put a roll cage in it, where I met Kenny Bose and Bill Morton at the time.
Wild Bill Morton?
Yep.
He was an interesting cat.
Yeah. Well, he raced the modified class at Saugus, and Kenny Bose was in the street stock stuff. And anyway, he'd helped me out a lot. He went to the first race, and we agreed I'd run the ovals and he'd run the figure 8.
Who ran the 8, Bozo or Wild Bill?
Bill was a partner with Kenny Bose, and when they had the welding shop, and he would run his modified car sometimes, and Kenny Bose helped me with the street stock. So it was Kenny and I. So Kenny ran the figure 8, and I ran the ovals.
He was a great figure 8 driver, and
yeah, he was.
You guys muscled around some big pigs back in those days. Rayburn and a Thunderbird, and a lot of the big block Impalas, and that Pontiac you started in was no slouch either.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's some of my favorite times in racing is Saugus Speedway.
So then somehow you end up with you get this hair, and I can't figure out when it was, but it seems like it was within the first year or so that you decide, okay, so 2 years later, it looks like, you decide you're going to go race a Winston West car.
Yeah, I don't know. I lost my mind. I think I had the opportunity to pick up a car that Jack Simpson owned for really cheap. I was friends with Frank Moronsky and some other guys from F&F Machine, and we put together an engine and towed it to Ontario.
But you're making that sound simple.
It was pretty simple, and it was pretty crude. It was just an opportunity. The car was complete, so all I had to do was put an engine and trans in it, and we went out there. Jack Simpson helped us, obviously, because he had raced before. So we went out there. We qualified 23rd out of 30 some cars and finished 19th.
So you go from Saugus to Ontario.
Yeah, I lost my mind.
and I mean, the difference in speed is probably 100 miles an hour on the chute.
I was young, didn't know what I was doing. I just held on. I mean, those cars didn't have power steering or anything, and I'm still pretty skinny, but I mean, it wore me out. It was only a 50-lap race, but it was eye-opening.
Who was in the race? There were some big names in that race, Bill.
Bill Schmidt, Herschel McGriff. There was a lot of them.
Roy from the comedian guy, the Canadian guy.
Yeah. Roy Smith.
Roy Smith. Yeah.
Bill Schmidt, Roy Smith, those guys. A lot of people. Pat Minty Sr. was in it.
It's unfortunate that kind of something that made me start this series was the passing of Pat Minty Sr. And the whole time I raced with them at Saugus, I never realized that he was a West racer.
Yeah, he was actually pretty good. That was my second opportunity. He was out of town. They gave me the opportunity to drive his car at Mesa Marin. I think it was like 84, a couple of years later. And we finished 5th, and that was a lot of fun, being in a competitive car and having success, not tearing anything up. But that was a lot of fun. His
cars were gorgeous cars. Yeah. And what kind of chassis was that? Do you know?
I'm guessing it was probably a Speedway Engineering chassis.
Speedway or Jackson. So it's interesting because
really built West cars.
Yeah, it's interesting because then you come back and you win the figure 8 championship at Saugus in '83. That's just totally so backwards.
Well, I mean, these were just like one-off things. I didn't have any money to go West racing. We threw together a car pretty cheap to go do it, and then like I said, Minty let me drive his car, but I had a street stock and a sportsman car that I built to compete in both classes when the sportsman 2-barrel class came out. But that was my home, Saugus Speedway, every Saturday night. So we did that in '83. In '83, we won the championship driving Dennis Johnson's car. So and racing Rodney Peacher all the way to the end for the championship. In fact, the championship wasn't tied up till the end of the figure 8 race.
You're pretty used to that. It happened throughout your career.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So Herschel McGriff, does he belong in the NASCAR Hall of Fame?
Oh, heck yeah. He should have been there a long time ago.
Yeah. We've kind of started this little hashtag trying to get some traction, and I've been told this week that it is getting some traction. I think it's a travesty. He's been on the ballot for 6 years now and hasn't been voted in yet. And I think it's because a lot of the people back there haven't they don't even know about the West Coast, the West Series back then. And it's hard to find stuff on the West Series because they've changed the name to the K&N, to the ARCA, instead of just leaving it like these were the West guys and then these were the ARCA guys and these are the K&N guys. So you kind of met you raced with Roman a lot at Saugus.
Yeah.
He was another guy that seems like he was in a street stock and then he was in a tour car, and I guess that happened a lot back then. But the first car I ever remember you driving at Saugus, and I don't know what year it was one of the newer type Lagunas, kind of looked like a West car.
That was my sportsman car. It was a '73 Laguna.
Yeah, and it said short dick on the short deck.
Yeah,
is that what it said? Short deck.
Well, yeah.
Everybody thought it said short dick. It was on the hood, huh? Was
it
or something?
That was my nickname.
Oh,
Bill Morton gave me that.
Oh, it figures. So Bill Morton used to hang out with my next door neighbor Gail Litchfield, and he had that Charger, right? That little. He drove around a Dodge Barracuda or something.
Oh yeah.
He did. It was bad fast. And I just remember that we turned off on Langside on Soledad Canyon Road once. We came up Langside, and I had a 427 Chevelle, and we turned right to head towards Saga Speedway, and he caved in the whole back of my car. He must have pushed me a quarter mile down with that. I don't know what he had in that Charger, but man, it was fast.
Wow.
That's my wild bill. And then the other thing I remember about Morton is him getting hit in the X once in a 57 Chevy, and I mean, it took him an hour to cut the guy out of the car.
Is that right? Yeah.
Did you ever take a lick in the 8?
No, fortunately.
No. That's an art, right?
No.
So Kalzinski hooks up with Spears, and they come down and they buy your car, right?
They wanted to go do some West racing, and I had built a car that I couldn't really afford to run. It was a 84 Buick Regal. And that was when they downsized to the smaller cars, like the midsize. And we went out and tried to run it a couple times, and the engine blew up a couple times, and just, they wanted to buy it, and so I sold it to them. And then Roman came and had a meeting with me with Spears, and wanted to find out if I was interested in being a crew chief for him. So I did. I mean, I knew quite a bit about the West cars at that time, and so I ended up crew chiefing him. In '87, I went to work there, and then we won the championship in '88. And I think in '88 also we ran a few West races with Roman.
Right. And so were those true, like 108-inch wheelbase metric chassis cars, or they just met those bodies on a fab chassis back then?
They're a total fab chassis from Speedway Engineering. Leon Ruther, who was a friend of mine for years, helped. He built most of it for me. So everything was state of the art that you could do, as far as, especially being on the West Coast. But it was a really nice car. Like Spears still has it in his shed up at his house in his garage.
What a blessing to work for Spears right down the road from you, right? And he basically had a Winston Cup shop on the West Coast. He had some beautiful stuff, and those were always really, really, really stout cars. And I would say maybe in the Tour's heyday, right?
Yeah, well, the Tour started in '86, I think it was, and Roman ended up driving for him. They hired me to be the crew chief, and we had a good time. We won the championship, like I said, in '88. Won a lot of races. He was a really good driver.
And then you had proven yourself that year in a couple of West races, and you ended up coming back, and Spears decided to go full-time West racing with you the next year.
That was in '89. Yeah, we won the championship in '88. In between the Tour races, Spears had a lot of cars up there, and there was a car that Roman never really cared for that much. And they were sitting around one day, and the engine builder said, "Why don't we take this thing to Saga Speedway and run it?" And we did, and we went out there and just loaded it up. We didn't even tell Roman or anybody. That was that left a bad taste in people's mouths. But we went out there, and we were able to win the race at Saugus with it, and so that was fun. It was nice to get into one of those cars to see what kind of stuff Roman was dealing with when he was racing the cars. It was a different car. It wasn't one of his cars. It was just an older car they had sitting there, probably from the Dennis Dyer days, because Dennis Dyer started out driving for Wayne Spears originally.
What a miss! I don't know that story, but I know he didn't. I don't remember seeing Spears with him for a long time. So there was a miss there somewhere, on somebody's behalf, because that was certainly a well-financed operation, Yeah,
it was an opportunity. It was a once-in-a-life opportunity that I walked away from. I'm still wondering what I was thinking, but that's the way it goes.
But you didn't walk away from Spears until Waltrip came calling, right?
In '96, yes.
That's when you left Spears.
Ron Hornaday and I were pretty good friends. I actually, Ron Hornaday drove the car that I'd won the championship with a couple of years earlier, and he drove the car in '94, and I was the crew chief, and we just missed the championship with him. And then the truck series was created, and Dale Earnhardt called up Hornaday to come run, and of course me seeing that opportunity, thinking the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, and found out there's pretty much weeds over there. So.
Right.
And so when Waltrip called, he was forming a truck team at the time. I took that opportunity and probably should have stayed. Probably just stayed on the West Coast.
It's interesting that Waltrip would come calling, because wasn't there I remember a quote from you about losing a motor in front of Waltrip at Riverside or Ontario or something.
Oh yeah,
back in the day. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we had that '77 Monte Carlo. Pat Minty was going to use it and try to get into the race for points at Riverside, and I was there helping him. And he didn't. We missed the race by a couple of cars, and anyway, they had happy hour. So Pat said, "Why don't you get in the car and make some laps?" So I did, and the engine blew up and put oil down on the track going through the S's there. And Darrell Waltrip came sliding by me backwards, giving me the finger out the window. So it was a little embarrassing. I got some pretty big trouble for that one because I shouldn't have been out there.
Did you ever tell him that was you in the car, like later on?
No, I probably got fired.
So the first few.
Yeah.
You're really consistent in that truck. And looking at your history, and I may be wrong, but you seem to do really well in the big, heavy pig type stuff. Maybe, like the West cars more so than the tour cars. Is that maybe because you didn't have the best tour car when you went out, but you had the best West equipment, or was it just it suited your driving style a little bit more?
I was sloppy. The tour cars were pretty precise, more like a go-kart. Everything you did, made a difference. And the West cars were heavy. They rolled around like a taxi cab, something like that. And they were just a little more forgiving. So I was able, I adapted to that style more. There was a couple of times when we'd run a tour race. I remember a couple of times at Mesa Marin, I put the car on the pole, but I would run 5th or 6th or 7th or whatever. It just didn't really run with the rest of the guys. They were pretty precise, on how they handled and everything.
Yeah, because you were good in a West car. The two West championships. No, and you're a humble guy. I know that. So, but Leon Ruther, you had him. And then you had Chris Robinson for a while, both guys that know their way around Saga Speedway. But Leon really had his history with, you and Insolo and a lot of very famous West Coast drivers.
Right. I helped work on Insolo's car when they built the car, the last car that he was running for the championship in Mesa Marin. I used to go with him to the races as Herschel. I used to work on Herschel's car. I used to jack his car up, at some of the pit stops. And Herschel always says that I was spending too much time looking underneath his car when I was working for him. That's how I got all the speed secrets and stuff when I went to Spears. So it's kind of funny.
Oh, so he kind of,
he's always poking fun at me when we talk about it. He said he didn't know I was checking out his car when I was jacking it up.
Back in my day, if someone was under your car, we were yelling coming down and that was a big no-no, right? You were on his crew, but no one ever really went over and jumped under a competitor's car.
No, you don't even look under the hood.
No, that's very true. So tell me about, did Moronsky, did FNF do any of your early on tour motors or West motors, or did you guys do all your own stuff up at Spears?
We had an engine shop in-house. The engine builder's name was Willie Cohen when I first went there, and then he went off and did other things, and then we hired Chris Robinson to build the engines, and that's when we really started to shine. He's just a perfectionist when it comes to doing engines. He works for Yates right now, Roush Yates, doing their rental program for the Xfinity cars.
Wow. Yeah. He, I didn't know he did motors, but I know that another guy, his stuff was always pristine, when you saw it. He raced at Saugus, and Dennis Fisher hired him for a while. He's built engines at Fisher's, and then I talked him into coming to work at Spears full time up there building their engines. So he was there for a few years. What an amazing facility. And now Connie and Wayne, they stuck around a long time. They're still involved in the tour, what we call the tour now, I guess,
Yeah.
super late model racing. And um, what made them kind of get out of it? Did they made a run at it back east too in Carolina, right? Or were they doing your guys' stuff from out here?
They got a shop back east. They worked back there, and it was just hard putting the right people together to just make it, successful. They were still doing their own engines at the time. I think Bill Lowe ended up going to work for him, and they just struggled here and there. It's just hard to get peoples and the right driver, and I think they just kind of got frustrated with it after a while.
Yeah, they had so much success. They probably, Meropolis, I think, does most of the stuff now. Does he do your guys' stuff?
Yes, he does our engine. We have probably 12 engines or so for the ARCA series that we run. He does most of them. Peters has a couple of engines that he does a couple engines for us also.
Freight Train Peters?
Yeah, Brad's his son.
Yeah, it's funny because I never had a Meropolis motor. I always had an M&R motor, which I think, we're just a step above stock at Saugus and stuff. And I went in Rayburn sold me a Meropolis motor for Irwindale, and I put that thing in, and oh my God, man! I mean, it just felt like the difference between a V8 and a six banger. I mean, just crazy stuff. So
Pretty smart engine builder. He's been doing engines for a long time. He's got drag racing wallies all around his office from his drag racing days, so he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So somehow you make this. You just at some point decide you're going to make a transition out of the seat. Now, I heard something once about you at Texas, that you didn't like Texas. You didn't like the speed of Texas, or did you have something happen at Texas that made you have some ghosts or something?
No, I cut my teeth on short tracks, and I just never really adjusted to running 170, 180 miles an hour. The cars just drove different. They felt different. I felt like I wasn't in control of the car like I needed to be. We went there the first time, and I actually had Ron East. I started the race, and Ron East finished the race for me. So just one of those things. And I kept trying it. I raced the trucks in Homestead. It was okay. We qualified 10th or 12th or something like that, and the engine ended up blowing up. But I've been to Kansas and some of those places. I'm just not as comfortable there as I am on the short tracks where you can just get in there and muscle your way around.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I remember taking my open wheel modified to, Cajon, and it wasn't bad, and Orange Show wasn't bad, and then I took it up to Mesa Marin and felt my helmet lifting up going down the straightaway, and I remember Rod Johnson was in front of me, and I thought, this is pretty fast, right? So I can only imagine, Texas, someplace like that. And so you made the transition from driver to basically a full-time crew chief. And that couldn't have been exactly paying the bills initially. But you have become one of the premier crew chiefs on the West Coast. Certainly you could probably go back east and make a good living as a crew chief as well. Tell us about that transition. It's just because you were one of the few guys that knew how to work on their own cars.
Well, if I couldn't be in a car that was capable of winning, I didn't want to race. It just, opportunities just kind of dwindle away. And I enjoy working on the cars. I enjoy the engineering part of the cars, what makes them work, what makes them do what they do, as far as handling. I just enjoyed that part. And so I've helped people before. I still help a few people now and then, but the opportunity came up to crew chief Mike Duncan. And so we went up there, and he pretty much let me do everything I wanted to do. And we won 2 championships with him, and it's pretty cool. And it just started getting calls from people here and there, and it's just worked out. But I enjoy the engineering part of the cars.
Right. So that's 4 championships, and I know there's more to come. So there's two as a driver. Oh, let's give you this figure 8 one because I had one of those, so I'm gonna give you that one too. So that's 5 championships. So after Duncan, who was your guy?
After Duncan, I went to work for Bomber Cotty. Jason Bowles was driving the car, and after I think the first year, I don't remember what we did the first year. The second year, we won the championship with him, and a bunch of races. So that was cool. And Bob Mercati and Maureen, they're just total race fans and just great people. So probably the best job I've ever had is working for him.
Is it more fulfilling winning a championship as a crew chief or winning a championship when you're behind the wheel?
They're both the same. I mean, it's nice. There's, it's hard driving a car and everything that goes along with it, and then to pull that off, because any little thing can happen to the car and you're out of the championship. So, which has happened being a crew chief also. So it's gratifying to win.
And on the other side, more pressure as a driver or more pressure as being a crew chief?
Well, there's you got to deal with the driver, you got to deal with the owner, you got to deal with the crew, and you got to make the car work right. So there's more obstacles, I guess.
You got to deal with the dad, and you got to deal with the mom.
Right.
I know what you can and cannot say, and let's digress back a little bit to who is the best driver that you think ever at Saga Speedway?
It'd be a toss-up between Dan Press and True Cheek, I guess.
Wow.
They were both pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah.
We just had True on, and he's a humble guy too. And, Press was certainly really good. And it was different because there were guys also that, when you look back historically, True was good everywhere. Press was good everywhere. Insolo was good everywhere. I don't see a lot of stuff about Prosser going to a lot of different places. Did he do the Ontarios? I don't see his name very often.
I don't know. I really don't know. He was before my time. Him and Bill Foster and those guys, they were before my time over there. But you always heard about them and how good they were. So as far as I didn't realize True went to as many places as he did. I thought he was just a Saugus guy. So I watched the interview. It was pretty amazing, the things that he's done.
Yeah, I was surprised. I learned a bunch. Every time I do these, we learn more and more and more stuff. And when you won the figure eight championship at Saugus, did they do separate points, oval and figure eight?
No, the only way you could win, it was a street stock championship is what it was. And in order to gain points, you had to run both divisions.
I think that was smart was Ray in control the whole time you were there, or? It
was Marshall.
And then so you had that transition.
Yeah.
I think that was smart of Ray because a lot of guys didn't want to run. No, they didn't want to run figure eight. We would start figure eight mains and guys would pull off after one lap in the backstretch. And I heard of guys getting eggs thrown at them and sandwiches and beer and because they pulled off after one lap and they parked. I had one buddy said, I quit parking back there. I just pulled off the track,
I enjoyed the figure eight. I didn't know much about it. Kenny Bozay pretty much taught me everything that I knew about it because he was just so good at it. Like I said, we shared the car for the first year, and then the next year, I would I would do the figure eight, and I remember lining up in the back for every figure eight main thinking, I've lost my mind. What am I doing here? And as soon as the green flag falls, it's all business. Everything's timing, as you know. It's a lot of adrenaline, a lot of fun.
I had to lie to my mom for a year, racing figure eight. I told her my buddy was in the car.
Yeah.
And then one night I got hit and I got out of the car and I was in trouble. I was 20 something years old and she would probably whoop me as she could.
Yeah.
So figure eight, which corner did you like the car to handle perfect in? Or did you just take it loose both ways?
Well, my car worked pretty good both ways. There was a lot of changes because you ran the same car. We'd get done with the oval main and you have to set up for the figure eight main. So I had guys that Dave Hard used to race there. He helped me out, Jim McLaughlin, and we'd put the camber in it and put the big wheel on the left front and go for it. So, but it's hard to. I don't know. I never really thought it handled much different in whatever turn. Obviously, it's an oval track car, so the left-hand turns were pretty good, but it still got through the other side pretty good.
Pretty neutral. And were you one of the guys? I know I always, when I was in 1 and 2, I was looking out the window in 3 and 4 and trying to time it while you were still in the corner, so you didn't have to let off on the straightaway, or were you just close your eyes and go?
Nope. Kenny Bozay told me the art, and he says you watch the car's front bumper coming out of the other turn. If his bumper doesn't go down, you better think about slow down a little bit. So you'd always watch the other car and what they were doing. I could split 2 cars with 2.5 cars between them, and it makes for a good show, and it's pretty exciting too. But every once in a while, you come up with somebody that's not going to lift, and so you just got to time it. But I mean, you have time to time it.
And people don't understand, aiming at somebody to miss them, right? You actually kind of.
Right.
So who was the guy that? And we had a guy named Mike Branham, and I don't know what he drove, but he would just never stop. He didn't care if he wrecked. And who was the guy that just went every time, and you knew he's going to go?
Roman Kalzinski.
Really, Kalzinski?
Oh yeah, he was
in his Buick.
He was great. Yeah, he was probably one of the best there. I had watched Bill Killian the year before, and he was a guy that pretty much won all the time, and unfortunately he got killed. But I watched him a lot and what he did and how he handled it. And but Kenny Bozay really taught me a lot about how to run the figure 8.
I just remember him in that the I think it was purple, the 09.
Yep. Tommy
Impala.
Atkins car, Atkins junk. Rust never sleeps.
Yeah, I never met Tommy, but I know you guys all had cheated up tires, and I even when I was racing, I talked to Tommy after that, and everybody I was racing against had cheated up tires, and except me, I guess. Tommy, trimmed everybody's tires for him, Rip Michaels and Brian Kelly's, and I remember your good friend Ken Mailer. He was always chicken. He would never run the 8.
Yeah, he's actually my neighbor. He's done a lot of the building on my house, on my remodels on my house here. But he was pretty good. Him and Dave Blankenship and some of those guys. They were a lot of fun.
Yeah, that one they came. Mailer raced with me in '89, and then I moved up to Sportsman, and then him and Dave pretty much dominated that class in '90. And he is a good contractor. So you move through all these ranks, which is incredible. I think a lot of kids today, it's got to be hard on them, and because you're working with them, that some of these kids, what do they do? Like maybe a go-kart, and then they jump into a late model at Irwindale or something, and then they're in a West car or something. They just, it's expensive to cut your teeth nowadays.
Yeah, most of them it seems like have rich parents that can afford to put them in something. I don't know. To me, it's a way to start is go-karts and then get into the hobby stocks, street stocks, and just learn car control. That was one thing that was so good about Saugus. It was flat, and so you needed to really learn, car control as well as setup, because if you're going to win, you had to pass cars on the outside at Saugus.
Right. Which was a rare art. And Saugus was one of the few tracks that the heat races were inverted, the main events were inverted. So if you were quick time, you were starting 30th in a main event. Yeah,
that's how it was when I first started there. I want to say I qualified 15th my first time there, finished 7th, and Kenny Bozay finished 7th in the figure 8 on our very first race there. So that was pretty amazing when you look back on it, because they had 30 to 40 cars back then. They would run B and C mains, all the time. Fortunately, knock on wood, I never had to run a Consi race. But I always said to myself, I think I can do better. And I still say that today. I just think I can do better. So you just keep striving to better your craft or better whatever you're doing.
Yeah, there were some A, B, C, and D mains. I remember pitting down by Flair a couple times, the Burmite place before the train, like you're out in a dirt lot, and
right.
It takes you a half hour to get to the staging main. So let's go back fast forward. Now we're jumping around a little here, but so you get the championship with Bowles in a West car, and then who's after that?
Oh gosh, we had a couple different drivers. We had Luis Martinez. He was a go-kart racer. We won a race with him up in Portland on the road course. Didn't win a championship. And then had a few different drivers. Derek Thorne was probably one of the best. Just so well at managing a race. I've never met anybody that can manage a race like him.
So we talk about Derek Thorne. How many West Championships did he win? 2?
He won 2 for us, yeah.
I have never seen I think, me personally, he's the GOAT. He is the premier driver that the West Coast has ever seen. I think the guy's just spectacular. I watch him right now, what he does in that. I was just watching a race on TV last night, not the false spectacular, but the Toyota shootout.
Right.
And, the way he gets off the high corner of a guy like Peltier going in the corner, and then he instead of diving low, he wants to go around the outside of him.
Right.
And he does it.
Right. He enjoys racing and passing cars. They had a race in Vegas a couple of years ago where they paid him, I think he was fast time, and I think they paid him an extra $10,000 or so if he would start at the back. He says, yeah. And he came back and won the race.
He's a talented guy.
He has a lot of talent. It's a shame. It's a shame he hasn't had an opportunity back east because he can do it. He's not a guy that just gets in the car and goes as fast as he can. He manages the race. I've seen him almost go laps down, and with 15 laps to go, he'll lap the field. He's just a smart racer. He knows where to put himself on the racetrack. He knows how to not use up a car. There's not many talents like that around.
I've asked this question to True the other day, but how much of the success would you say is like pure talent, pure skill, or how much do you feel like you have to really, really, really work at it, or is it just different for every driver?
Well, it's different. I mean, Derek just has raw talent. He's we went to a go-kart track one time, and he's just crazy. He's not a go-kart racer, but he just has that drive to make something happen, pass, whatever. He's just there's just total talent.
Now, when I play or watch other sports, basketball, soccer, or whatever it is, or even football, you can kind of see, the passing lane for a receiver, for a quarterback, kind of open up, or soccer when you're doing that. When you're racing, what is that experience like of seeing, like, your lane kind of open up, and okay, I'm going to take that, or if this happens, then I'm going to go there. What's that like?
So it's a lot of adrenaline, it's excitement, but I mean, you're always looking for that opportunity. For me, I remember a race at Colorado National Speedway where we're just following each other around. I said, heck with this. And I pulled out and I passed everybody to go to the lead on the outside. So it's opportunity, and you got to know when to take advantage of it.
And you probably learned that at Saugus. I mean, a lot of times at Saugus, everybody's just dying to get, down onto the inside. And there were times when you just felt like you're getting held up,
Yeah.
and you have nothing to lose, jump
Well,
to
I
the
mean,
outside.
you gotta. I was never happy with just being content running, whether it's third, fourth, or fifth, or whatever. I need to get going. Hornaday was like that. I mean, Hornaday did not like to follow anybody. I mean, he's the best restart racer I've ever met. When the green flag came out, he'll be in the grass, dirt, whatever. It doesn't matter. He doesn't want to follow anybody. He wants to lead, and that's just his mentality.
Yeah, it's interesting. My good buddy Garrett Cromsite, who won a lot of races at Saugus, that was his mentality. Just from the time the green flag dropped, he's going to the front. And when I met him, he had wrecked out of a lot of races, and I started I'm a little more calculated, and started helping him and telling him, hey, what, this is a heat race. Let's just relax. Main event's coming. But yeah, guys like Hornaday, the green flag drop, he was going to the front.
Yeah, he didn't care. He's passing. I mean, he'd have cars pass before he got into turn one. He just wanted to be up front. He didn't like following anybody.
No,
he's one of the best racers too, especially Saugus Speedway.
So you get 2 more with Thorne, so that's 8. And I know you've had him after Thorne, and you're kind of that whole team. I mean, it's you and Schrader are the two crew chiefs for the Brancati cars. So sometimes they run 3 cars.
We ran a third car last year for Dean Thompson. He's one that they ran some SRL tour races, and they wanted to move up to the ARCA series. So Tim put together a program, and we loaned him everything they needed, cars and stuff, and he went out and ran. Now he's running a truck.
Yes, yeah, I saw him in Vegas. Who's running the whole Brancati show, like the team manager?
I do.
So you're the.
I do all the cars. I have 5 full-time guys there that work for me. I set all the cars up, and just it's a whole team effort at Sunrise Racing.
Do you go all the way? Where's that located at?
It's in Fontana.
So
Bob actually has an old dealership on Foothill Boulevard in Fontana, and so we have this pretty big, good-sized facility for all the cars. And anyway, we bring in outside help for all the races. Jeff comes and crew chiefs the 9 car, but they basically all get put together right there, and I pretty much lead the bunch.
You jump up over the hill every day for that? Do you?
Yep.
What, Angeles Crest back
So,
and forth?
no, I don't go Angeles Crest. I'll take the 138 to the 15. It's 70 miles each way.
Yeah. Schrader's, I remember racing at Saugus, and then, he obviously opened a race car factory, and he's developed himself into a real smart chassis type guy. And
yeah, no, he is.
Certainly the team. So the Menard series, hard for me to call it that. I always call it the West Series or whatever.
ARCA. It's ARCA.
It's kind of had some highs and lows, that they split it to the east, the west, and then they went combined. And I remember times when they were down to, 8 or 9 cars, and it would be, 3 Sunrise cars and maybe 3 McNally Reynolds and those. But then it kind of all changed when some of the Gibbs guys started jumping in, and they started really using it as a driver development platform.
Right. Well, originally it was the West Series was formed to fill in, the Cup Series when it came to the West Coast. Our races were combined, and we got points for running those. And a lot of Cup guys wouldn't come to the West Coast, so we were kind of a field filler. But it was part of our schedule, so it made it nice to go run some of those racetracks. Then they had the Busch North Series, which were kind of the same cars. We had a little bit of different rules, and so when ARCA took over it, they pretty much put the whole series under one platform. So now we can take our car and go anywhere we want to go. We can go to Daytona. We can go. They have the East Series, the West Series, and then the regular ARCA Menards, National Series. But now the cars are all the same, so it opened up for people to tow here or there and run. Where pretty much wherever you want to run. The West has actually been getting some pretty good racing and some pretty good car counts the last couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I thought maybe it was dying off a little bit, but it has. Tell me about Suzuka, the Japan race. I mean, what was that? What was that like? I mean, how far ahead of time? Tell the people what that was. How far ahead of time you guys had to have your stuff on it?
It took 2 weeks I think it was about 2 weeks for the cars to get there on a container ship, and we flew over there, and that was a lot of fun. The people were just amazing. They were just so excited to have NASCAR cars and drivers and stuff there. It was just pretty awesome time, really. It rained during our practice session, and Dale Earnhardt was there, and there was a bunch of big name guys there, and it was just a lot of fun. I think my car ended up breaking during the race or something like that.
Were you in a Spears car for that?
No, it was Gary Blatchley's car. It was just a guy from Simi Valley that put together a car to go race. I drove his car a couple of times. Actually, Craig Rayburn, I think, drove his car a few times too.
All the good racers are from Simi Valley. Right? I actually grew up in Canyon Country, but I moved to Simi. I think the year Saugus closed. Okay. I came out of Simi. You did some races at Willow Springs too. Were those West races, right?
I took the car that I had built that I ended up selling, Spears. I took it there, and I think we had an engine problem or something, but we raced there a couple of times.
That just never took off, and it surprises me because I thought they thought that was really going to be like the new Riverside. And
Well, that place is busy 7 days a week. They just have so much going on there: sports cars, go karts, motors. They just have everything going on there. The place is booked up all the time, and the owner, he's content and happy with what they're doing right now. It took somebody to promote a race there. I think Ruben Garcia, when he was racing with us, he promoted a race over there a couple of times, and we went there. But it's a great track.
how many? And Brandon always usually asks this question: you raced at a lot of tracks that are now closed that aren't part of the West Series. Like when you were in the West, there was a lot of tracks up and down the West Coast, and a lot of times, I found this out from True that they did a lot of dirt and oval, dirt and pave racing. But there's a lot of those historic tracks such as Yakima that you guys don't go to anymore as even part of the ARCA series on the West Coast.
No, we don't. We go up to Monroe, Washington. We went to Yakima. It's been a while. It's been a lot of years now, but we've been there before. We used to go to Roseburg, Oregon. They got a little fairground over there, and racing's really popular. McAnally used to, put on the races there. And racing is really popular in the up in the Northwest. I was fortunate enough to win a couple of the Motorcraft 500s up in Washington. They're 500 lap races on the 5/8 mile. That was a lot of fun.
Those 500s always go to the guys with the patience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first race I won, Bill Elliott was in it, dominating the whole race, and there was a late caution, and I was able to get by him, and I ended up winning that race. And then the second time, Sterling Marlin was out there, and he was just beating up on us pretty bad, and he ended up burning his tires off. So I was able to go and win that race also.
It seems like somewhere around between 95 and 97 is when the gap came between True Cup teams and West teams. Like there was at that point, the West guys could no longer, they weren't getting cars from back East anymore, and they could no longer really, smash the guys from the East when they came out here.
Well, there's always been a gap. Those guys back then built their own engines. They had engine builders. They built their own engines, and the West Coast guys had engine builders, and they did their. But it wasn't the same. They were always, a couple notches up on us. And then the more we went, the bigger the gap got. We took a Spears car back to Martinsville a couple of times and made first round qualifying. That's when they used to qualify for 2 different days. And we made first round qualifying back there a couple of times and ran those races, but not as competitive as the Cup guys would be.
But when they would come out here and run Riverside, like you said, Gilliam and Elder and Insolo and some of those guys would smash the East Coast guys.
They the West Coast guys that ran the road courses like Insolo and Third Kettle, some of those different guys, Ron Esau was one. They just, they had the opportunity to run that racetrack, and it's the Cup guys didn't really run much road courses back then, so it to me, in my mind, it evened up the playing field. It's Jimmy Insolo got a chance to drive Richard Petty's car one time when Richard Petty wasn't feeling well. It was a pretty cool opportunity for him.
Did the Cup guys were they respectful of the West guys, or were they kind of just like dismissive?
It's hard to say. I mean, when we used to run combined races at Phoenix and in Sonoma, they would pit us in our order. If I was first or second in points, or Dale Earnhardt or Rusty Wallace was first in points, it would go them and then us, and they would alternate them all the way down. So I got to know Rusty Wallace pretty good and Dale Earnhardt pretty good. And I became friends with this crew chief, Kirk Shelmerdine, and we'd share some ideas on things. And I'm sure they look down on us, a little bit, as long as we weren't in their way or whatever, So
Right. So if you were Cup first in points, and then you were West first in points, they put you guys next to each other.
Yeah. So if Dale Earnhardt was first in points and in the Cup side, and I was first in points on the West side, it would be a Dale Earnhardt, me, then Rusty Wallace, and then Bill Schmidt or something like that. That's how they lined them up. So it was pretty fair. They intermixed.
That's pretty cool
together. Yeah.
Give us what's one of your favorite Rusty Wallace, and then one of your favorite Earnhardt stories that maybe people might not know.
Rusty Wallace came and drove one of our Spears cars one time at Mesa Marin, and that was pretty good, pretty cool, seeing how he wanted the car set up and things that he wanted done to the car. But he was wild and crazy then, So it was a lot of fun. But just getting to know him. Bobby Allison drove one of our cars one time up there. I got to know a lot about what he does, and we became friends. So it's a good opportunity to see, a different breed of racers, really.
What about Earnhardt?
Dale Earnhardt was he was a good guy. I remember he and I were both in the Gatorade Circle of Champions one year, and I just don't like talking in front of people, and I said, he just told me thank you, to say thank you the whole time. So I even we were at Texas World Speedway. He came there and ran a West race one time, and I remember walking through the garage and having him come up behind me and shake me on my shoulders. Just he knew I didn't like it, and he told me a story when he first went to Charlotte Motor Speedway. He was scared to death, and cars were going by him like he was going backwards. But it's just something you got to go out and do.
It's awesome.
He definitely liked to punch people and shake them on the shoulders, like you said. Like everybody remembers. I remember being at Riverside when I was a kid, and he was shooting bottle rockets out of a Coke can over the backstretch by the bridge, and they lit one landed in a Andy Gump, and it lit the Andy Gump on fire.
Yeah.
They just thought that was the best thing. I mean, they were good old boys and still liked to have a good time. That was when he was in his Wrangler car.
Yeah.
And they put their pants on one leg at a time too. And I think that the older the series has got, the drivers tend to get a little stuffier, and it could be because of the packages they're wrapped into from a sponsor standpoint. But great times, for sure. And it's unfortunate that a lot of the drivers that you mentioned, aren't with us anymore. And that was another motivation to do this and hear about them, hear their stories, the Minty and Ron Esau just, in the last month or whatever. And some great history of West Coast short track racing.
Yeah, it's a shame, but I mean, that's just the way it is. What are you going to do? Nothing you can do about it, really. So just got to enjoy your times when you have them and make the best out of them.
Right. So in now with the ARCA, I mean, you're pretty much the dominant crew chief. It's you guys have two teams, and just West Coast teams is just you and McNally, right? DeLong told me that they were the last. Don't smile. One car team, like left or whatever, but there's no more Bill Sedgwicks that can just go buy a car and go run that series and be competitive.
There's a few out there. I mean, Todd Souza's been with the series for a long time. He's a single car team. There's quite a few. There's quite a few teams out there. There's probably 12, 14, 16, cars out there that run pretty well. There's some people, learning the ropes, trying to get it figured out, and they participate. But it's as far as the bigger teams go, I would say it would be McAnally and us right now.
Jefferson Pitts.
Pitts is Jerry Pitts is back fielding a car right now, so he came back last year. But I mean, there's still a lot of quite a few independent guys that come to support the series.
And are there guys that are just doing the West that are their cars are coming from back east? Any of the development drivers?
A couple of them do. I mean, Todd Souza's been buying cars from David Gilliland and motors and stuff back there and coming out. They ran with us at Phoenix. He ran pretty good. Unfortunately, one of our cars got tangled up with him at Phoenix, but it's the way to go. But Jake Drew's my driver this year. He ran pretty well there, finished fifth, so it's a good run for us.
And you had PJ Jones, right?
I had
his grandson.
Yes, Jagger Jones.
Jagger. What a cool name.
Parnelli's grandson, PJ's son, Jagger. He was really good. Also, I missed having him in the car. He was a good talent, along with James Bickford, Jeff Gordon's nephew. I had him in the car for the 2 years. We won a couple of races. Also, there was another good talent that they just don't have the money behind them to move ahead. The sport's so money driven nowadays. Teams are doing whatever they can to keep their teams going, so they rely on drivers bringing money. A lot of them.
Yeah, I heard some crazy numbers from guys like Will Rogers that was he was renting some hit and miss car. I think he ran a full season and then he won a couple of the road course races. But I'm not going to say what the numbers are, but they were pretty big freaking numbers to do a rental for a race, and you definitely, someone has to be bringing some money to the table.
Yeah, it's tough because these kids or younger people with a lot of talent don't get the opportunity. That's what I really admire about Bob Mancotti. If he finds a driver that's got a lot of talent, he gives them the opportunity. That's what he did with Jason Bowles. They didn't have any money to do anything, but he was a great go-kart racer. He was a good late model racer, and Bob gave him the opportunity. Same thing happened with James Bickford. They didn't have a lot of money behind them, so we put him in the car for a couple of years, hoping that somebody would recognize the talent and pick him up back east. And that's the disappointing part about Derek Thorne. We won a lot of races, won championships, and nobody's picked him up. So it's just sad. Right now we're working with Jake Drew, who's a karter. He still runs national events and go-karts and runs up front and wins. So it's Bob really enjoys him and trying to help him out. But there again, if you don't have money behind you, it's a tough road.
Yeah, because even a couple of the other names that you mentioned, even like Jones, I haven't heard anything about him. He was a good little shoe, and so if they don't, your guys' kind of goal is to get them picked up on the East Coast. That's
what Bob likes to do. Yeah, and he fits the bill himself to do this for these younger drivers with talent. So it's the best we can do out here to try to help somebody.
Yeah, I know a couple of years ago we were helping out down at Orange Show, and I had heard that Orange Show couldn't put up the fee to bring the West race there, and McNally and Bob took it out of their own pocket to be able to put that purse up and run that race. And
that's a fun little racetrack. It's it put on some pretty good racing. We raced at Stockton years and years ago. Also, it was a pretty good race. I mean, if people want to get out of control, you're going to wreck your car, but you don't need to. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but we've put on some pretty good races at Orange Show and even Stockton.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind even today. I would jump in a West car, one of those big pigs, and go wheel it around the bull ring or something like that. But I certainly wouldn't want to jump in it and go race Irwindale. Little bit too fast for me. And speaking of Irwindale, did you jump in a modified there last year or?
Yeah, we ran a modified race a couple of times. Jason Bowles' dad, Kevin Bowles, he had a modified, and I was helping him put it together. It was one of Jeff's race car factory cars. We played with it a little bit and took it out there and ran it a couple of times. I think he finished fifth, but I just didn't really have that much time to spend, playing with it and trying to work bugs out of it. But that was a lot of fun, though. We just ran the little third mile, which was pretty much like Saugus.
Right. It's not. I loved that the small track at Irwindale. To me, it's a lot different than Saugus because you got the bank and you don't have a wall and it's really hard to mess up. Well, kind of just wing it around.
Yeah, the little track at Irwindale, if it's got banking, it's it's only a couple of degrees. It looks pretty much flat. It drives like it's flat.
Right. Right. I love that.
But it's
That's
a lot
a
of
good little
fun.
track. You had Partridge too. Was he you or was he under Schrader?
Partridge was under Schrader. That's when I had Derek Thorne. We finished first and second in the championship.
Yeah. What a
Uh, Ryan
dynamic
Partridge,
duo.
good talent there. He's good driver. He's another one that never really had any backing behind him, and Bob put him in the car for a couple of years, and we had some success with him.
I've been on the spotter tower with him a couple times when I've come and done a couple of West races and stuff, and he strikes me as as a guy that would just be phenomenal as a driver development coach, spotter, Partridge.
He's
You
good.
know,
He's good at doing that. He was spotter coach for Dean Thompson last year, and they sat on the pole there one day on lead 145 by 150 laps. He got beat on the last restart, but I mean, Ryan was helping him be there. So yeah, he's very good at doing that.
it was funny. I was at Vegas for the truck race for Bodine's. He's doing this 6 race to get to 800 starts, and I'm a big part of that with him. And we were in the pits, and I was looking around the pits there, and I see Lawless Allen, and I see, Dean Thompson, and, there's like 4 kids or 3 or 4 kids that are in the truck series right now that came out of late models or Winston West or whatever Arkham Menards West, all through Irwindale Speedway Irwindale must be the new Saga Speedway to be able to cut your teeth on.
Yeah, it is. It's a good track. For me, the half mile's not really a Saturday night, beginner track. It's tough, but it's a great track to race on. It's more of a professional level type racetrack, and it's tough. It's tough to run. It's tough to come there and run, when you don't have much experience on a smaller track, just understanding the cars.
Yeah, and you're not, when you wreck there, you're not going to pick your part on
No.
Sunday morning to pick up an A-arm or something, right?
You're rebuilding the car, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of room to race. I mean, you can race 4 or 5 wide there. It's wide enough, but it's not really an entry level track, I don't think. But to me, if you start off on the little 3rd mile and then cut your teeth and get to know racing, you graduate to the half mile and puts on some pretty good racing. They have a lot of good racing there. It's a good track.
They do. The thing about the 3rd mile there, the small track, I mean, there's just nothing like Saugus when you took your lawn chair and you put it at the fence and you got crap in your face and you're just so far away from the action at some of these tracks.
Right.
Other than you go, but Orange Show, Madera, some of those tracks are still the races right in your face. There's just no experience for that. Even people right now that I have friends and they've never been to a race and they ask me, where should I go? And I tell them, don't go to Fontana. I can't even watch a race at Fontana. I tell them, let's go to Phoenix is a great place to go for the first time or whatever. But it's awesome. And it's certainly been a journey from the roots of West Coast, and I don't think that we're ever going to see a guy go race a couple of big, huge, road races and a couple of big Ontarios and Riversides and then come back and win a figure 8 championship. We're never going to see that again, Bill.
Well, you got to realize I started in '79, and 2 years later I had this opportunity, so I took it, but I wasn't ready. I mean, I had no business doing it, and I would think twice about doing it nowadays. But I was learning. There's just a lot to learn, but it was an opportunity that came up, so I took it. But my heart was still with Saga Speedway and the sportsman and street stock classes. They were just a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were blessed. You can be humble about that all you want, but I don't think that I just ever would have had the guts to be like, oh, I'm going to, I do have a great Riverside story that I'll share later, but I couldn't do it. I just would be like, hell no, that'd scare the crap out of me. I'm not doing it. So appreciate what you've done for West Coast racing and certainly for the talent that you've helped develop, and you guys are doing great things. It's a blessing to have people like you and the Spears and the Brancattis and McNally's and the people that have been contributing to the sport forever and have been loyal to the West Coast. And Keep doing what you're doing, and thank your beautiful wife for setting this up for us. We really appreciate you having. We have you were high on the fan votes, and so hopefully the fans are going to be happy with it.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks. It's pretty awesome what you're doing.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you,
All
Bill.
right. Take care. Thank you, guys.
All right. Appreciate you. Thank you. Bye-bye.